Okay, so welcome to the second in the series about identifying asymmetry in the horse and in the rider. We've got a horse for you to look at today, and we're going to go over the pointers that you should be looking for to ascertain how much asymmetry is in your horse. So there are 3 points that we're going to look at on the horse. We're going to look at the shoulders, we're going to look at the last rib, and we're going to look at the muscle tone in the horse's croup. So these are 3 good, really easy indicators for you to see. The prerequisite of any of these is that your horse is actually standing 4 square. Okay, so I've got some chalk, some nice powdery stuff. I'm going to palpate the scapula. I'm going to find the back edge, and it should be like a half disc, and I'm just going to put a line where the palpated edge of the scapula is, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So with your horse standing nice and 4 square, we're going to look at the line coming up here from our scapula and the line coming up here from our scapula. And you'll see there's about an inch difference with this horse. Vertical line up to the top of the wither there, and a vertical line up to the top of the wither there. And about a thumb's width or 1 inch difference between the two. Okay, so what does this tell us? I am not an anatomist. I'm not as good as Gillian Higgins at drawing or painting horses. So there's your scapula, and apologies for the shape, everybody. And then what you've got around about this point here is the insertion point for serratus ventralis thoracis, which is a muscle that is, you've got to imagine this lying between the scapula and attaching to the rib cage. And that's going to come down and it's going to attach to our rib cage like so. And this muscle group, this sort of triangle of muscle, there are 2 groups to serratus as well. There is another group that comes forward and will attach to the base of the neck. Very powdery chalk, this, but we're not worried about that one. That supports the 5th, 6th and 7th cervical vertebra, but we're not worried about that. What we're worried about is serratus. Now, serratus is the strongest muscle of attachment of the forelimb. It is basically the main part of what we refer to as the thoracic sling. The thoracic sling is not just one muscle, it's groups of muscles which include the pectoral muscles, especially the transverse pectorals. But the one that has the influence on the, if you like, the end of the leg, the scapula, is serratus. A young horse grows a wither. As it grows a wither, what is it actually doing? Well, it's pulling the rib cage up in between the forelimbs. It's not laying down more bone. What it's doing is it's literally heaving up the rib cage in between the scapulas. To do that, it shortens serratus. And we all know that as we tone a muscle, it gets shorter. So it pulls up the rib cage and up pop the dorsal processes. Fine. What also happens though is scapula is not attached to the rest of the horse's skeleton. It's floating. So that forelimb basically is, the horse does not have a clavicle, so there's no attachment. So what's going to happen is, as that group of muscles shorten and tighten, it also has an influence not only on the rib cage but the scapula, in that it pulls it back and it pulls it down. So your scapula will appear further back when it's stronger. It might also be that because the weaker one, which is more upright, is also, if you like, further away from our rib cage, so the one on the right in this case is further away from the rib cage, that shoulder may look bigger. And everybody looks at well, not everybody, but most people will look at the shoulder and see it bigger and assume that that is muscle and it is stronger. It is not. If you have a scapula that's actually further away from the rib cage and sticking out and therefore looking bigger, that's your weaker shoulder. In most cases. It's not the golden rule, but in most cases that is. So, first thing to look at, the shoulder placement. The shoulder placement that is furthest back gives us our strongest shoulder. In this case, the left. So now we know it's the left. So now it should follow that this horse will be stronger in the right hind. So how do we assess that? So the second check, we're going to come right to the other end now. So we've got our left shoulder that we suspect is the strongest because the scapula's furthest back. Then we're going to go from basically round wire the SI joint out to the point of the hip. And what we're going to do is we're going to just palpate with the horse standing four square this muscle group, his gluteal muscles. And we're going to see what the tone of these gluteal muscles is like. And then we're going to come around to the left and we're going to do the same on the left. And this left buttock is a lot softer than this one. This one's a lot, it feels a bit more dense. He quite likes that. Anyway, this denser group of muscles over here, more toned, tells me that he actually is using this right hind more than he uses this. Or if you like, another way is this is his preferred leg. If he was a human, he'd be right-footed. He prefers to use this leg. So if he prefers to use this leg, he would prefer trot to the right. If he prefers this leg, he will prefer canter to the left. He will prefer adducting, bringing that hind leg underneath him and laterally moving to the left. If he was a jumping horse, if you're taking him down a grid of fences, if he's going to drift, he will drift towards the left because he will push harder on takeoff with this one than this one. So the natural tendency is for the horse going down a grid of fences to end up to be to the left of the fence when we get to the end of the grid. If he's going to change legs over a fence, he's going to go to his preferred leg. So what he's going to do, if you came on a right rein, he might change to the left rein, stay on the left rein to the last fence of the grid, and then change back to the right, if assuming you're coming on the right rein. So all these sorts of factors tell you how your horse, or if you like, ticks the boxes towards you deciding how your horse is going to be muscled and what it's going to prefer. Okay, so let's find the horse's last rib. So stick your hand in here and find, until we find the last rib, follow it up. So it's that line there. So we're about this point here. I'll just put a little mark. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to get on a box. And I'm just going to mark across this horse's back in a line. Okay, so if we look at this horse now, this horse is standing four square. It might be quite difficult to see on a video camera, on a video, but I can, when looking at this line on this side appears higher and the angle appears flatter to me than over here. This one is dropping away. So on the right-hand side, it looks like the rib cage is dropped away, whereas on the left, the rib cage looks higher. Now I'll explain why. Now we'll go back to the shoulders again. Okay, so what we have is a horse here that has a stronger left shoulder. The serratus group of muscles are shorter and tighter on the left than they are on the right. We said about the young horse pulling up the rib cage in between the forelimbs by shortening serratus, but what we have here is an asymmetric shortening. the left side is shorter than the right side. That's borne out by the fact that the scapulars are in a different position. But it's also borne out by the fact that the left side will be pulled up harder than the right side by this left side of the rib cage being higher than the right side over here. That's why we see that angle looking different. It's dropping away over here where it looks flatter over here. This horse will drop a rider to the right. It will bend much easier around the rider's right leg. It is what we describe as a right hind drive horse. So it's pushing from its right hind to its left fore. So now we will see how it affects the rider and the horse combination when we put both together and see it in a ridden format.